Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for joining us today again. My name is Sachika Oates, and I work as a technical assistance consultant for the American Institutes for Research, and I am part of the CalPro team. Today, I am sharing findings from a participatory action research study I conducted at the California Community College, examining its practices and campus climate through an exploration of immigrant origin adult learners' lived experiences. This was, well, that was a lot. This was part of my doctoral dissertation. And so let me start by sharing the information about my positionality. I myself am an immigrant who moved to California from Japan as an adult and learned English as a second language. I am the first person to graduate from college in my family and an alumna of the local community college where the study was conducted. After immigrating to the US, I struggled to find my way back to a fulfilling profession, like a lot of immigrants do. But eventually, I got a job teaching at the college. I worked there for more than 17 years, mostly supporting adult learners, first as faculty and then as a director overseeing the non-credit adult education programs, including ESL, adult high school GED, and IET. While I was working at the college, I noticed that immigrant students can face barriers transitioning to a credit-bearing program. And to tackle this issue, it was important for me to amplify students' voices, taking a bottom-up approach to institutional improvement. So that's about me. That's me. And then now I would like to find out a little bit about you. If you could, please join this anonymous poll through Poll Everywhere. There are a couple ways to join. You can click on the Poll Everywhere link Josie is putting in the chat. That's pollev.com freshspring487, or you can scan this QR code using the camera app on your phone. There will be two questions. The first question is about your heritage or ancestry. As you know, today's topic is about immigrant students' journeys, and to encourage you to think about your own and your family's journeys. If you know and are willing to share this anonymously, please put a ping on the map to show your heritage or geographic location of your ancestry. You may choose multiple locations, of course. Okay, let me switch to the view. Once everyone's in, were you able to scan the code? Oh, wow, look at this. Wow, thank you so much for putting a ping on where your heritage or your ancestors are from. Wonderful. Look at this map all over the world.
And Sachiko, I think that the poll is full, so it's possible that people are from other places as well.
Thank you, Josie. Great. Okay, okay. Now moving on to I see the little, can you clear the annotation, Josie? Thank you for posting the stickers on our map. But now the second question is about your role at your agency. I'm hoping to see we have representation from all types of adult education and community college professionals, as we need leadership from all levels and every area to make institutional changes. Great, lots of instructors. And there are, classified staff, administrators. Wonderful. Thank you for responding to these mini surveys. Great to learn a little bit about you. Oh, there you go. We have a counselor as well, counselor and advisor as well. Great. And other, if you said other, please feel free to put in the chat, what you do at your agency. We would like to learn about that. All right. Now let me go back to the slide. Okay, again, thank you for telling us a little bit about you through the poll. Now let's get started. Today's objectives are to explore immigrant origin adult learners' lived experiences and examine school or campus climate and institutional practices that may hinder adult immigrant learners' equitable access and success, and start a conversation on how your program can help dismantle barriers and leverage adult immigrant learners' strengths. Sounds good? Here is today's agenda. I will first introduce you to my co-researchers or participants of the study and go over the content of the study. In other words, the context of the study. In other words, the context of today's adult immigrant education in California. Then quickly introduce the theories that guided the study and review over the overall findings. The findings and co-researcher quotes will be inserted throughout this presentation to keep it engaging. And next, we will zoom in on a few areas of the findings and we'll analyze them together and discuss how these findings may apply to your agency. We also hope to have some time for Q&A at the end, and this will be an interactive session, so I hope you can actively participate. And let's see. I'm admitting some people. And one of the ways I am hoping you could participate actively is to share your ideas on this Padlet. As you listen to co-researcher quotes and other findings, please keep an eye out for barriers and strengths or helpful support services. And please add to this communal Padlet through the link. That's bit.ly/CalPro snapshot. It's one word, but CalPro is capital. Josie, can you put the link in the chat as well?
Yes, it's in the chat now.
Perfect, thank you. And then I'll share my own findings a little bit later, but we'd like this to be an opportunity to co-construct knowledge and solutions. If you follow the link, you should see this Padlet page open up and click on the plus button under the category you want. We have barriers, strengths, and support, and ideas for action and resources. Then a dialog box like this should pop up. Then type in your ideas and push the pink publish button. Your post should appear like this. And I already put some resources in there, so it should look a little bit different, but please add to this as you listen. And you can post ideas anonymously or with your name. You can see others' ideas as well. So yeah, so this is a Padlet, that we're gonna co-create today. Back to the research. Again, during the 17 years of working at the local college's non-credit adult education programs, I noticed that immigrant students can face barriers transitioning to a credit-bearing program. I decided to examine the college's campus climate and institutional practices through student experiences. Educational programs often, collect and share success stories where their practices are featured favorably, but I thought, what about other stories? And it was important to me to amplify students' voices and examine real student journeys and critically analyze the institutional practices and campus climate. So I set out to conduct critical participatory action research. And the purpose was to offer a counter space to empower adult immigrant learners and then explore their counter stories to encourage changes in motion. I recruited 6 local college students and alumni, both from credit and non-credit programs, to participate in the CPAR innovation as impacted community members and also as co-researchers. They all shared 2 intersecting identities, adult learner and immigrant origin, among other identities they individually have. Their ages ranged from 25 to 55 plus, and 4 first-gen immigrants, meaning that they were born outside of the US and 2 second-generation immigrants, meaning their parents were born outside of the US. And we had 5 female, 1 male. 1 person is in a same-sex marriage, 2 were born in California, and others were from Mexico, Brazil, Thailand, and Vietnam. And here are the co-researchers: Alejandra, Antonia, Benjamin, Emma, Joel, and Lynn. They generously shared their time, perspectives, and expertise, contributing to the foundation of this work. And I know some of you are here. I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but if you would like to, come on camera and wave, that's okay too, and chime in anytime. Okay, now let's talk about the California context in terms of adult immigrants. This is a little bit of a quiz. Please put your answer in the chat if you can. So what percentage of recent working age immigrants in California had bachelor's degree or higher when they immigrated? The data is from 2019, something to think about. We are talking about immigrants who have been in the US 5 years or less and aged between 25 and 64. What do you think? What percentage? Oh, a lot of people say C, D. Okay, B. Okay, thank you for participating. It is C, 52%. Did that surprise you? I saw that some people knew the answers. The number is higher than for the US-born Californians at 38%. The percentage for the same criteria in 1990 was only 21%. So we can say that the immigrant population has shifted in the last 3 decades. Right, and what about the percentage of recent immigrants who had not graduated from high school? Please put your answer in the chat. See lots of different answers, B, C, D. Thank you for participating. It is actually B, 29%. I think many of you got it correctly. So 29% is actually much higher than the US-born Californians at 7%. So we have this interesting split among recent immigrants in terms of educational attainment. Another concerning fact is that 75% of California workers in industries that require little formal education are immigrants. And in addition, first and second generation workers were more likely to be overeducated for the jobs they take in the US compared to third plus generation workers. So that's one of the reasons why I included the second generation immigrant origin adult learners in this study as well. And finally, Asian and Black immigrants are consistently more likely to be overeducated compared to white immigrants. So let's take a look at how these facts manifested in my research through some coworkers' quotes. Here's a quote from Lynn, one of the co-researchers. "I finished college in my country, but I cannot use the diploma or degree here. So I started from the beginning to start in GED again." Here's another one from Lynn that shows that, the impact of having to start over and how it can affect one's self-esteem. "I went backward. When I was in my country, I finished college and I was supporting my older sister and I felt proud of myself. But when I came to this country, I completely forgot where I was before and I felt stupid. I didn't know anything and I got upset easily." The fact that she was not able to get support in transferring her high school and college credits from Vietnam and having to start all over again did not help with the confidence. Another co-researcher, Joel, shared his experience trying to find a job in the industry he had worked in his country. Most companies I have interviewed for didn't accept my background in my native country. The first question is, oh, have you worked in the US as a project manager? I had to drop down, get a lower paying job, and start again. With the demographic shift, we need to provide support for diverse students, including internationally trained professionals. We can perhaps offer credential translation support, credit for prior learning, and networking opportunities for students. Some adult education agencies partner with local organizations to offer credential translation, and some California colleges, such as West Hills, have been offering portfolio-based prior learning assessments. And some cities and states like Texas and Maine have organized networking and mentoring programs for internationally trained professionals. I added some of these resources to our Padlet, so please take a look when you get a chance. Okay, now let's narrow in on the context of community colleges in California. Immigrant origin adult learners are an important constituency in higher education, especially in California. As you can see in this graph, combined first and second generation immigrant students made up half of the 2.7 million students in all of higher ed in California in 2018. This percentage was higher than the national average, which was 31%. While immigrant learners are critical to higher education, and when you look at these big data, it might seem that immigrants are just doing fine in higher education. But when you listen to student stories, a different picture emerges. And I'm going to share some quotes from our core researchers. Alejandra, who is a second generation immigrant learner, faced racism and bullying in school and did not get to finish high school when she was younger. I'm going to pause so you can read her quote while I sip my tea. And she, Alejandra, as a working mother, came back to the college's adult secondary program to earn her GED. Now she has a higher paying position at work. Another second generation student, Emma, shared how she faced a systemic barrier based on educators' biases. She was born and raised in California. She says, in high school, our counselors were never available for questions because we were not important enough for them. We were never told about college because I think we were put into a separate little category. And even without the support from high school counselors, Emma found a way to get to college as a young adult, but said she was treated like a beggar from a street in the financial aid office when trying to enroll in college. So she said, I could pay for my own classes, but when you do that and you have a family, you have to pick between paying for classes and paying to support the family. So after that, it took a few decades for her to give college a chance again to come back to complete her degrees as an adult. And finally, this testimonial from Lynn illustrates how hard the colleges can make for immigrant origin students just to enroll. She had to go back and forth almost 10 times because she was already busy balancing work, children, and household responsibilities. She had to bring her son, who has autism, to one of the trips to the admissions office. And with all the people there, he got overwhelmed and got sick. They had to leave. When they stepped outside of the student services building, there was a campus parking ticket flapping on her windshield. At first, she didn't even know what the ticket meant, as there were no Vietnamese speakers there to help her. However, she persisted and earned her medical coding post-secondary certificate after completing all non-credit ESL levels and earning her GED. Lynn shared how her family, especially her son, has been her motivation. Okay, so I'm going to go through the context and pause for questions. Back to the community college context. the effect of COVID-19 on college enrollment across the nation was devastating. But the pandemic affected adult learners and students of color in California community colleges disproportionately. The full-time equivalent student count, or FTES, went down 12% between fall 2019 and fall 2020, when the national average was 9.5%. The decline in the headcount was even worse at 16.5%. That's 260,000 individual students. Also, a system-wide impact survey revealed that enrollment decline was steepest among adults who were parents, as well as students of color. Adult learners not having equitable access is a problem because statistically, adults with no post-secondary training have lower lifetime earnings and higher unemployment and poverty rates. This is one of the reasons why I set out to do my research. Again, back to the co-researchers. Co-researchers were certainly affected by COVID-19 negatively as well, but some of the testimonials that came out of this study were intriguing because some of them took advantage of the fact that they had more time due to the reduced hours of work during the pandemic to invest in their education. Tuition-free courses, adult education courses, as well as the CARES Act scholarships certainly helped. And having an online option was also a game changer for many of the co-researchers. Here's a quote from Benjamin. I'm going to pause so you can read. Okay. Another co-researcher, Emma, shared that after many decades focusing on raising her children, she was able to come back to finish her degree when classes went online. These are a couple of pages from her digital storybook. She recalled she was content in her little bubble with her family. That was until around 2016, when the public discourse on immigrants shifted and negative political rhetoric burst her bubble. Then COVID-19 ironically brought her the opportunity to resume her education by taking classes online. And Chicano studies classes brought her a liberating feeling against the challenging political climate. She has now earned her degrees in Chicano studies as well as liberal arts from the college. So these were some of the quotes from our co-researchers. I'm going to stop to check in with Josie. Do we have any questions or?
No, I don't see anything in the chat right now.
All right, thank you. Let's keep going. So now let me go over the theories that grounded this study a little bit. The main theoretical perspective I chose was critical theory. Quoting Dan Boutin, truth is linked to power. And the key question is who benefits? And the key goals of educational research through this perspective is to examine, expose, and overturn hidden relations of power. In the current system, immigrant origin adult learners can be compared to a square peg trying to fit into a round hole, which represents the higher education system, the system that's not quite built for them. And in the current model, the cylinder-shaped majority make decisions, teach the next generation the same way, which Paulo Freire calls the banking method, and transfers their social and cultural capital, according to Pierre Bourdieu, and maintain the privilege. So I tried a new model. In my research, the activities took co-researchers through a process of problem posing, dialogue, and critical consciousness building, and ended in a collaborative action through praxis based on Freire's problem-posing education model. We explored YASA's 6 forms of community cultural wealth, which students of color utilize to navigate higher education. They are familial, linguistic, navigational, social, resistant, and aspirational capital. I will not get into the details of these theories, but I'd be happy to share more resources if you are interested. As educators, again, we love to hear success stories, and we often collect such inspirational stories. However, there is value in listening to real stories and counter stories so that we can critically reflect on our current system, campus climate, and practices. So there were three major phases during the research activities with my co-researchers. First was awakening. Through journey mapping, we identified barriers along our educational journey in an autoethnographic manner. Then empowerment, we explored the asset-based community cultural wealth, and each of us focused on one or two forms of capital and created a digital story. The final stage was praxis or action. We presented our maps and stories and our initial analysis through an interactive exhibit on campus for almost a month, traveling to all three campuses at the local college, including adult education campuses. The study was made possible by the generous support from Arizona State University's various grants and scholarships listed here. So here are our ebooks. Antonia, Emma, Lynn, and I created photo books, and Alejandra wrote a beautiful poem with such honesty and vulnerability. I will share a link to those ebooks at the end of this presentation. Please take a look, as we don't have, unfortunately, enough time to share everything in this webinar. And the others created video stories, but each of them took a different approach. Joel used AI to develop his video to maintain a level of privacy, and Benjamin asked her son to record her speaking, and Lynn used her photos and words in a slideshow and added background music, also with her son's help. The link to the videos will be provided at the end of this presentation as well. And then I will show some snippets from these books in the next section. But before that, this is from the exhibit, our praxis. You can see how the posters and printed photo book pages were displayed at the exhibit here. The exhibit was interactive, and the attendees shared where they or their families and ancestors came from on the world map, just as we did earlier. We also had community cultural wealth exploration prompts to encourage the attendees to start their own stories, and we collected attendees' reactions as well. So the response from the campus community was overwhelmingly rewarding. Many of the attendees shared their own stories with us. Some said that they felt inspired that the changes are possible. The exhibit resonated with many of the attendees. One survey respondent wrote, "Being a woman of color, taking Chicano studies courses and understanding the injustice resonated with her." Yet another attendee said, "I'm a daughter of immigrant parents and found myself crying when reading these stories." So some also shared ideas for what the college can do. Others encouraged us to continue sharing our stories. And the research team definitely made an impact on the campus community. So let me summarize here the overall findings from the entire research process. Through analyzing the artifacts, meeting recordings, and transcripts, I found that trauma affected the co-researchers' access and success throughout our educational journeys. Traumatic experiences included abandonment or abuse in childhood, grappling with cultural and familial expectations, discrimination, negative impacts of immigration, and transgenerational traumas. We also faced situational barriers such as balancing family, work, and school responsibilities, physical and mental health issues, and financial concerns. We leveraged community cultural wealth to persist through those challenges. And we found institutional barriers, including implicit and explicit biases in the education system, tuition and fees, and lack of information. There were also helpful support programs, such as on-site childcare, tuition assistance programs, and free employer-provided training programs. And what contributed to our motivation and success included the curriculum content that was relevant and where we felt represented, as well as distance education options. And all the participants expressed they felt empowered to take action. However, the process also revealed that the path to critical consciousness development is complex. And these findings are documented in my 200 plus page dissertation. But for today's presentation, I'd like to focus on these two areas: community cultural wealth, or strengths that students possess, and institutional barriers and support services. All right. Before we analyze this together, any questions so far? Please feel free to type in the questions in the chat or unmute and speak when we pause. Okay, well, now we're going to zoom in on a couple of snapshots from the research process and deconstruct these situations together in order to analyze what's going on. So as we read the first snapshot from Antonia's story, please think about what were the barriers Antonia encountered and overcame, and what institutional support and her own strengths did she leverage, and what can institutions do to dismantle the barriers and honor the learners' backgrounds, and what are some of the initiatives, resources, and budget sources you can leverage to apply the lessons learned. You may have realized these 4 questions correlate with your with our Padlet categories. So let's go back to the Padlet. Be ready to take notes or share your ideas on this Padlet. You can scan this QR code or type in bit.ly/CalPro snapshot. Thank you, Josie, for putting the link again. So let's look at Antonia's story. These are excerpts from her book, her photo book. Her formal education was interrupted due to her father's belief that women do not need education. She met an American from California and got married, got pregnant, and moved to the US. And she started learning English at the college's non-credit ESL program, but it was hard with a newborn baby. To make things worse, an ESL instructor accused her of cheating in front of the entire class after a short research report assignment on a celebrity. So she never went back to ESL after that. Because of this incident, she started thinking her father was perhaps right and that she didn't belong in education and the workforce. What changed her path was a tuition-free bilingual GED class with free on-site childcare. With the childcare barrier alleviated, she started excelling. She's now a certified phlebotomy technician and said she wants to pursue more education because she's a woman, a mom, and a wife, and she can do it all. So that's her photo book and also some of her comments. Antonia, in fact, developed her navigational and social capital to get to where she is now. She had work experience as a medical assistant in Mexico, so she wanted to use her skills in the medical field. However, she couldn't get into her local community college's CNA program because of a wait list. She then found out about an employer-provided training program at a local hospital. So she applied and started working at the hospital, actually in the cafeteria as a dishwasher, just to get a foot in the door. Then she started building her network by talking to other employees at the hospital. Antonia was successful in leveraging her community cultural wealth, but having to retrain for the skills we already had and starting over from an entry-level position in the industry we have experience in was a systemic barrier many of the first-generation immigrants faced. Okay, and in terms of strengths and motivational factors, Many of the co-researchers brought up their families as their major motivation. Here's Antonia's quote, and I'm going to pause so you can read and I can sip some tea. Okay. So what barriers did Antonia encounter and overcome? What institutional support and their own strengths, her own strengths, did she leverage? What can institutions do to dismantle the barriers and honor her background? What are some of the initiatives, resources, and budget sources you can leverage to apply the lessons learned? Please jot down and share your ideas and takeaways on the Padlet. Let me move to the Padlet and feel free to unmute and ask questions. At this point, I'll answer some questions while some of you are working on the Padlet. Okay, let me. Oh, I have the wrong screen. Whoops. Here we go. Can you see the Padlet now?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, I see some new posts here. Yes, degrees and licenses from foreign countries not recognized in the US, language and cultural assimilation or adjustments, childcare and transportation barriers. Fear paralyzes and becomes a barrier to seeking to support, overcoming stigma, shame around needing help, financial aid, lack of recognition of education and experience, discrimination, lack of child. Awesome, thank you so much. I think we are on the same page. Let me see. Please keep adding to it as you think of new things. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on the Padlet. And let me see. Okay. Yeah, and then please, come back to the Padlet after the webinar to read others' ideas. And so now I'd like to share, my observations and the implications I found. First, like you said, childcare can be a huge challenge for adult learners who are parents. If you can partner with other organizations to offer childcare, I know this is a challenging one. And it's important to be aware that everyone has a history and potentially traumatizing experiences. In Antonia's case, the cultural and family expectations based on her gender affected her education in her native country. The incident in the ESL class might not have had such a big impact if she hadn't had that childhood experience. Also, educators must reflect on the deficit model and cultural biases. Antonia's negative experience in her ESL class partly stems from the deficit mindset the instructor had. Working with students from different cultures and academic norms, educators need to be explicit about what is acceptable and what's not, what's considered, plagiarism in the US. You should also be clear about your AI policy nowadays and show examples of what's okay or helpful and useful and what is not. As this particular issue is evolving, you may want to have ongoing conversations. And whenever something questionable happens, there should be a conversation privately, not publicly in front of everyone. And, listen to understand and give students a benefit of the doubt. And understanding immigrant origin learners' unique needs includes scaffolding instruction to practice summarizing, paraphrasing, and citing others' work. And Antonia shows tremendous navigational and social capital to achieve her goals, from her, finding an employer-funded training to getting to know the people in the field. But institutions can support students in developing their network like this. And then Antonia took the employer-funded training when college courses were not available to her, and schools can and should coordinate with local employers to develop career pathways. We cannot be everything to everyone, and partnership is key, right? Okay, so these are some of my takeaways. If we have time, let's take a look at another snapshot during our last research meeting. Benjamin started telling the team about her potential next educational step. And the conversation ensued about how, lack of information creates inequity and a huge barrier. Benjamin shared, I found out the college has accounting and language courses, but I can't afford it. The staff said, you have to pay. I said, I'm sorry, my rent is already all my paycheck. Emma, who is a credit student, chimed in saying, just fill out the California Promise for your tuition. But Lynn interjected, but you have to be a full-time student. Emma then said, I'm only taking one class and it covers me. They did the California Promise. It's not the local city college promise. Lynn chimed in, now a little bit confused. I never heard anything about California Promise and I don't know how to apply. I'm connected to a counselor, but he never said anything about that. I told him that I'm planning to go back to school. I have to work, I have kids, so I want to take one class at a time. I cannot be full-time. And he said, there's nothing that can support me because you have to be full-time. He would only focus on the local promise. So it's hard to say what exactly happened. Maybe the counselor thought Lynn would not meet the eligibility for the grant. However, from the student's perspective, there are barriers presented here. Again, let me go back to our Padlet. Please add to the Padlet what kind of resources can be used to, alleviate these barriers. What did you see as barriers here? Check the chat too. Do we have any questions? Okay. Everyone's kind of quiet. Okay. All right, now let's go back. Please, as you think of something, please add to the Padlet. It will stay and we'll share the link again via email after the webinar. So you will have access afterwards. So this is my takeaway. Again, tuition and financial burdens remain a huge barrier for adult learners. While there are tuition aid programs, there appear to be room for improvement concerning part-time adult students, and financial aid to help not only with tuition, but school-related expenses, and also supplement income to compensate for the time away from paid work, such as the use of the Pell Grant, would be beneficial to working adults. I don't know if you heard of ability to benefit, but that is through the Higher Education Act provision, expands eligibility to the Pell Grant to learners on a career pathway who are yet to earn their high school diploma or equivalency. And utilizing inclusive funding, opportunities like ATV can support adult learners with delayed entry into post-secondary education. And even though adult learners must juggle multiple responsibilities and may not have extra time to spend on campus, it is important they have opportunities to meet other adult learners, cultivate their social capital, share information, develop a sense of belonging. As it happened in the research meeting with financial aid information for part-time students, the learner community can offer what is sometimes referred to as hot knowledge, with which social networks and community members have, as opposed to the cold knowledge colleges officially provide. other studies found that identity-based programs can help students connect to mentors and role models, as well as useful information and resources. So making those networking opportunities family-friendly is also critical to adults with young or school-age children. And finally, information dissemination should be equitable. In our research, credit students received different information than non-credit or adult education students. And one department may not have another department's information. For example, an academic counselor may not have known the information from the financial aid office. Counselors do not need to know everything, but they should know who or what department they can refer students to, right? Okay, so I know we discussed the direct implications from the snapshots, but there were a lot more data that I can share, a lot more data than I can share here today. So here are the overall implications for practice from the entire research findings. So train faculty and staff on trauma-informed practices. Immigrant origin adult learners can have elevated levels of trauma exposure. Like we saw a bit in Lynn's comment I shared earlier, migration can interrupt identity development and create conflict between the immigrant's native culture and the receiving culture, including loss of professional roles and social standing. With the realization the act of immigrating itself can be traumatizing, it is critical that educators understand how trauma affects learning. And the second thing is incorporate culturally, linguistically responsive teaching. As we saw in some of the examples today, biases, implicit and explicit, and deficit thinking can negatively impact immigrant origin adult learners. So to develop a campus culture and learning environment where all students feel valued, respected, and represented, schools can provide resources and opportunities for faculty and staff to routinely reflect on their positionality, biases, and mindset. And Emma's experience with finding Chicano studies illustrated finding relevance and representation in instructional materials can also boost immigrant origin adult learners' motivation. And CalPro actually has a brief on this very topic. So please check out the CalPro brief on culturally and linguistically responsive teaching. And related to that, leveraging students' community cultural wealth or their strengths is important. Create learner communities, support students' goals, inspire new dreams, and celebrate every accomplishment. And I think some of you put in the Padlet, make adult-focused support programs easily accessible and stigma-free. College departments should disseminate program information actively and equitably. Providing convenient access to support services and normalizing the act of requesting help, including financial aid, basic needs, support, academic counseling or tutoring, health and mental health support. Those are all necessary to create a more welcoming campus climate. And as demonstrated in Emma's story, being shamed for accessing support programs on campus can have a lasting negative impact. And immigrant origin learners are also found to be less likely to access formal mental health services. And stereotypes, threats, and self-stigma can also negatively affect historically underrepresented students' tendencies to access academic support services. So making support services accessible and stigma-free should be prioritized. And also offering quality distance learning options with robust support system is important. Finally, incorporating critical andragogy. It's a remix of critical pedagogy and adult learning theory into your practice can help. Considering the historical and current marginalization of immigrant origin adult learners in higher education and the workforce, critical andragogy can be utilized not only to promote immigrant origin learners' academic success within the current education system, but also to redefine what's valuable knowledge and what intelligence means, or what forms of capital is useful and advantageous. And do research with, not just on, immigrant origin adult learners. So if you'd like to dig deeper, here are some resources. Don't forget to check out our co-researchers' journeys. These bit.ly links can lead you to the actual digital stories and video stories. And if in case you'd like to check out my dissertation, here's a link. This has much more data and a lot more information. But also a shorter version of the same paper will be on the American Education Research Association's annual meeting website later in the spring, I think in April. And if you have any questions, please contact me. Don't hesitate. And I hope you start a conversation about the implication of this study and how they may or may not apply to your institution. And I also encourage you to start your own research at your institution. Find out what your students have to share. Okay, before we go, if you could type in the chat, what is one action you're going to take based on what you learned today? In the chat, please. Oh, thank you. Yes, slides. The recording of this webinar will be posted on CalPro website. Josie will be sending a follow-up email. Thank you, Beverly. Great to see you. Okay. Share this webinar with practitioners and follow up with discussion. Thank you. Seek feedback from students about barriers and need for help. Thank you, Laura. Jose, to find real resources that help adult learners. Thank you. Eric says, ask students directly about, well, lots of things are coming in. Great. Thank you so much. Which support are needing. Great. Oh, Catherine, thank you. Yes, start your students' stories. That's great. Being aware of our own biases. Thank you. Okay, keep this coming, but I need to ask you before we go to fill out this evaluation form. It will take only a couple minutes. It's a very short survey. Please follow the link to provide feedback. We value your feedback and we use the data to improve our future offerings. So thank you very much for participating in this webinar. Don't forget to check out our student stories and also please give us feedback through this link. All right. Any questions I can answer before we go? Yes, Diana, thank you. Yes, please revisit the Padlet for more ideas and please keep posting your ideas as you find some resources for us. Thank you, great. And thank you for my co-researchers who are here for providing your insights and your expertise. Was someone trying to speak? Okay. Any questions, please feel free to unmute if you like. Oh, questions. And here are some references and resources. We'll be sending these links via email after today's webinar. All right. Thank you so much. Did everyone get the link to evaluation? All right. If there are no questions, Josie, should we? Oh, some chats are coming in.
I'm not seeing any questions.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Linda. All right. Well, thank you again very much for joining us today. And I hope to see you in our future training through CalPro. Thank you again. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Bye. Sashi, nice to see you.
Thank you, Benjamin, for joining us. Did you want to say a couple of things?
Oh, it was awesome. I'm so glad to be part of your program and your project. Yes, everything was awesome. Yes, beautiful, beautiful. And thank you so much for having me in your meeting.
Thank you, Benjamin. She's one of the
Yes.
one of my co-researchers.
Thank
Hi,
you so
Deanne.
The one
much, Chico.
used to work 70 hours, sometimes 72, sometimes 74 hours a week.
Yeah.
Yes, so thank you so much. Sashi, I let you go and bye everyone. Yeah. Have a
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
wonderful
Benjamin.
day. Yeah, thank you.
Sachiko, my camera didn't work today, so I apologize for that, but
No problem.
okay. Well done. Really
Oh,
nice.
thank you,
Really good,
Deanne.
really good information.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Have a
I don't know
great
how you covered it all in an hour, less
I'm
than an hour.
blown away.
Thank you, Diana.
There's a question in the chat now.
Oh, yes. How are California adult schools, community colleges evaluating transcripts? Is there a consistent standard for the credit that immigrant students receive here? Great question, Catherine. I am not, the transcript evaluation specialist, but I do know that they follow a certain standard, and it's not always easy to accept foreign degrees and things like that. But if you could reach out to your local community college or adult school, and there should be a transcript evaluator there, and they might be able to answer the question a little bit better. But I think the conversation should start, what can we do to support our immigrant learners? I have seen, oh, I'm sorry.
It wasn't mentioned in the webinar, and I'm curious to hear from other people about people who are here without documentation.
Right.
Because a lot of times they're excluded from going into the community college environment because they can't afford it and they can't apply for financial aid. And I would be really interested to know what other avenues they have in terms of being able to pursue their education. Because we are getting more and more refugees.
Yes, I think there are there is a lot going on that front through the community colleges in California. I think in California we are in a sense lucky because there are lots of support being offered. So of course it depends on the person's situation, but definitely check out your local colleges. I think they have this undocu support week or something like that. They share all the resources with the local community. So check out your, start a conversation with them. I think I think that may be the best way to go. And I hear you. It's never an easy thing to solve.
No. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Ale, thank you so much. I don't know if you're still here. She was one of the co-researchers as well. All right. Thank you so much. It's past 2 p.m. So we are going to close the room. Thank you so much, everyone. Josie?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you.